Alright everyone, it's time for Vermont Issues episode 147, but first a quick announcement. I may be ending this series after 150. Slightly begrudgingly, but it's just fewer people watch them, it takes up more of my time, and it's getting harder to actually find topics to speak about, because some of them are like, eternal topics. There's not a whole lot of current events from Vermont. I'd really rather just do like a third mainstream political video, or even like, a cult, literature, stuff like that each day. So I may be ending the series and really doing more gaming instead. That's going to take more time too. It's entertaining. It's like a fusion of me entertaining myself and, putting stuff online at the same time. But like I said, I'd rather not nudge out the political content. So the Vermont series may have to go, because after you upload 3, maybe 4 videos a day, you get a declining rate of return of interest, honestly, unless it's on a Friday night or a Saturday. But it's time to talk about the Vermont Supreme Court here briefly, because it's so goofy. It's got an article here. They're like, oh, we've got to decide what a parent is. I think, talking about like gay couples who've adopted, stuff like that. How about this? A parent is somebody whose interest in the child is reasonably substantial so as to impart them additional legal rights above some other random fucking Joe shit the rag man on the street. How about that as a definition? Because you're right, it doesn't have to be like a blood relative. People have been adopting for a long time, and it's, in some cultures more common than others. Sometimes siblings will raise a younger sibling, some adult sibling, the parents die, get a fatal car crash, and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to raise my sibling here, because, at least we're still relatives, and it'll be fine. It happens. So I would use that as the definition, like it's a kind of a no-brainer. That, or, hey, they're a biological parent. They gave birth to or enabled the giving birth to this child. They imparted their genetic matter into the offspring. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean the parents couldn't be a deadbeat or 2 deadbeats. They certainly could. You could have deadbeat parents, shitty-ass parents that are, like, neglectful, or maybe they just don't give a fuck. They can be abusive, all sorts of stuff under the sun. But that would definitely be a parent under anyone's definition. The more legal for cultural purposes definition, though, should be the involvement and the apparent emotional interest in the stability of that child's surroundings. And it could be an adult child. I think, haven't there been cases where, like, adults adopt one another and stuff? And sometimes it's kind of weird, other times like, oh, it's kind of sweet, or something, they've been hanging out for 50 years, one of them decides to adopt the other. Yeah, I would think that constitutes parenting. It's more than just blood, true, although, again, the Vermont court has to ask whether that qualifies as a parent. Well, here in Vermont, because of our exceptional level of legalism, there's always the vague possibility that a Vermont court's going to decide to issue a binding decision whereby they toss blood entirely out the window, and they're just like, well, it's only the cultural legal side. Has nothing to do with, who gave birth to it. So, basically you'd be a baby snatcher. You just like, you care about the kid more than the bio parents, and the bio parents like magically lose all their rights because the Vermont courts decide so. You could end up with a situation like that. Anywhere else it wouldn't be possible. Here in Vermont, there's that remote chance that the goofy court will actually decide such a thing. Of course, we have continuous problems, by the way, right now with like child protection and things like that. Some of these problems date back decades. Like every once in a while, you get a kid, they're killed or neglected to death in a foster home. Some social worker rapes them or something. That's happened before, and it's regrettable. The state has not done a stellar job with regards to child protection, and you got a huge overflow of kids that need protecting because of the opiate crisis. So the situation's actually getting worse. Now, what letter grade does our Child Protective Services in the state of Vermont get? How do we compare the other states? I bet we're in the lower half. I'll bet anything we're in the lower half. Hell, there's some ass-backwards state is probably better off. West Virginia is probably better off despite being absolutely hammered by opiate crisis and poverty and all these other problems. That's pretty sad considering how much money we pump into education. It's a rather odd scenario. So I look forward to seeing the court's decision because it might be the opposite of common sense. Honestly, here in Vermont, it's always a possibility. That's about all. Peace out.